Hello, and welcome to the Craft Brewed Music Podcast, the official podcast of Craft Brewed Music, the app that streams better music for serious listeners. Here we explore and get to know the creators of that music. I'm Brian Horner, founder and curator of Craft Brewed Music, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Aaron Stamen, a Craft Brewed Music artist. We've got singer-songwriter Emily Keener with us on the show this week. Emily's been a Craft Brewed Music artist since the beginning, and we're really excited to explore her music. We're going to focus on her newest album. It came out a year ago, I Do Not Have to Be Good. One of the songs from that album, Do You Love Me Lately, is nearing 2 million plays on Spotify. And it's a really interesting album. She had, put out a couple albums before becoming a finalist on The Voice. And even after that point, continued to find herself and define herself as an artist, and has arrived in somewhat new territory here.
Emily Keener was a delight to have on the show. As I may have surmised by listening to her music, she is a very thoughtful and articulate person. Her songsmithing features the best of what I like about songwriting. And I think good songwriters are like good authors, and that they know that you need conflict in the plot in order to make it move and to make it exciting for the reader in the case of a writer. And in this case, the kind of tension you need to make a song compelling. And we allude to several of these devices that Emily uses in her songwriting that creates attention in a very subtle, almost covert way. She does it through decisions about harmony in the vocal, and harmony in the guitar chords she chooses. We talk about it in terms of tension in the lyrics and the themes that she uses in her songwriting. And lastly, we talk a bit about production decisions. And for this new album, she was directly involved in decisions about how the album sounded, and about how the instrumentation was approached, and about even details of the gear used. And this was a great conversation, and she was just a delight to talk to.
This also marks the first episode that's part of our patron program through Patreon. So if you're somebody who wants more of what we're offering, there's a link in the description of this episode. And with a couple different tiers, one offers you a soundtrack episode that'll be 6 songs of Emily's, just the music. And there's another tier that has some merch, the soundtrack episode, and another monthly bonus episode, the Craft Brewed Music 6-pack, that is a sampler of music from other artists. So, that's an exciting addition to the show as well, and we hope you'll check that out. We're going to set up our conversation with Emily with a cross-section of her work.
And I laid on a little green patch in wood with a bundle of rags from a long, long time ago. I held an unsteady job at the film developing shop on the corner of Main Street and Thomas. Lorelei would hold her own hand when she would start to get lost, 'cause she knew nobody was as committed or honest with her heart as she was. As she was.
So Emily, where are you right now?
So I am actually in a rural area, kind of about an hour outside of Cleveland. I don't know if you know like where Oberlin College is, but it's just like kind of in that
Yeah.
area, southwest of the city. It's beautiful out here. Spring is amazing. Like I'm looking out my window right now, and the lilac tree is blooming. We just had a kind of a very snowy day yesterday. I was a little worried about some of these blooms, but I don't know, everything seems to be fine now. All of it melted away. So it's beautiful. I love it out here.
And this is where you are right now is where you grew up.
Yes, yep. Yeah, I was born in Cleveland, lived there and in Cleveland suburbs until I was about 8. And then my family packed up and moved out here. I have two siblings, younger brother, younger sister. And I don't know, my folks were just looking for a little bit of a quieter life. They really wanted to homeschool the three of us. It was a dream of theirs to do something like that and to, it kind of goes hand in hand pretty well with living in a rural area. There's a lot to learn from the land out here. Um, and so it was a pretty great way to grow up.
Do you think that setting, that the rural upbringing, is kind of a feature or a presence in your songwriting?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so, definitely. There was a certain aspect of isolation out here. It wasn't necessarily like a degenerative isolation. Like I didn't feel that it, you know, wore on me as a person. But it did, I don't know, it allowed for a lot of kind of introspective time to myself, even as a young kid. And so I just ended up getting getting up to things that I don't know that I would have been so fully invested in if I were, actively, in a public school or maybe around kind of the happenings of a city or a suburb. I just kind of had a lot of time to fill, and I ended up filling it with music, and it has just led me to a lot of really interesting places in my life. So, I think it did have a big impact on who I am as a person and a musician.
Being outside of an urban setting and being outside of a public school setting, um, how what was your access to music? What was your method of discovering music?
So I grew up listening to my dad play guitar and sing. He didn't write his own music, and he never really has, other than just kind of jamming around on the guitar. But he would always play a bunch of folk, country, rock songs, and that was like one of our family activities together, was just to gather and listen to him play. And I always thought it was so cool how he could make those sounds happen with a guitar. Like obviously I was too young to understand how any of it worked, so it was like a form of magic to me, and I was transfixed. I just would sit there and watch him play. And like we would sing along with him, and he would have like a very eclectic playlist of music that would accompany us on our car rides. So that was like a big connective factor in my family. And I think when I was 11 was when I really got interested in playing guitar myself. My parents had got me a little pink Daisy Rock guitar for Christmas, and
Nice.
Awesome.
yeah, oh my God, it was so badass. It was probably the most rock and roll instrument I will ever own. Um,
Yeah, I hope that still goes on tour.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could find, I think I ended up giving it to, I ended up giving it to a girl who was a little younger than me. I probably gave it away when I was 16, and I just felt like she would love it and, love to learn on that guitar.
Yeah,
So it was kind of cool to pass it on.
that's the proper thing to
Um,
do. Yes.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. You got to share the love with that.
You could
Um,
still hunt her
but
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, totally could. Totally could. Hey, give me
Give me
that
that.
guitar, kid. Yeah, so it came with a little guitar instructional book that just had like the basics for tabs, some chords in there, just just one note songs, a lot of those basically. And I just sat in front of that book for hours and hours, and I taught myself how to play. My dad would show me some things here and there, but he was, busy a lot of the time with work. So I just had all this time to myself to really just dive into it. Like, I played until my fingers bled. I was so obsessed with it. I got to the point where I was learning, Taylor Swift cover songs. Like, I really loved Taylor and Carrie Underwood and Miranda Lambert. I was big into like the female country music stars back then, back when Taylor was more in that country world. Um, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a train at that point, a moving train, like a momentum um, kept building, and I just couldn't stop. Like, I loved to learn and explore, and my parents were both really encouraging of what they were hearing. So it just, I don't know, it just happened pretty naturally after that.
Well, we've been, spending a lot of time listening, of course, in the last couple of weeks, and kind of surveying all of it and really enjoying that. And I found it really interesting. You made two albums, then became a finalist on The Voice, and then made two more albums. And I've read where you've said that this latest album came out a year ago is maybe the most you artistically. And I love that the experience of being on The Voice didn't seduce you into the world of mainstream pop and define who you were. It
Yeah.
sounds to me like, if anything, maybe you've continued to follow your artistic path, which of course is what we're all about at Craft Brewed Music. And I'm just curious to kind of hear about that arc.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys digging in and listening to what I've done thus far. It's always cool to hear. I I think I think my experience on The Voice, it had a pretty big impact on the album that I released right after I was on the show, because I think I would be out in LA taping these shows and doing the performances, and I was out there for probably 5 months, with some breaks in between. And when I would come home, I would be recording my own songs that would come out later that year in November on that album Breakfast.
Hmm.
And that definitely had like more of the pop influence going on, just because of
Right.
what I was doing at the time. Um, but when that was all wrapped up, I felt a little bit disillusioned from the sort of stuff that I had been doing, and I really wanted to be more authentic. I was so young at the time too. There wasn't
Sure.
necessarily as much depth to me as a person at that point. Like, I had some stuff going on, but like, how far can you really go when you're
Yeah.
16, 17?
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think it was honestly the turmoil of that year, and the intensity of that ended up leading me to go to deeper places and really become more authentic as a person, as well as just giving me like the confidence um, to really come into my own as a person. Like, it, being on the show was the scariest thing I had ever done. And performing live in front of millions of people, it it kind of has this effect of like, oh, if I can do that, I can do anything. Like, if
Yeah.
I can go out here and give my all to a song that I really care about, even if it's not my own, um, and really make it happen and come out on the other side, then yeah, I can perform anywhere. I can record whatever I want. Like that sort of mentality. Um, and I think that was probably the biggest gift that I got from that experience. So moving forward, I was really able to tap into that and just get more confident as time went on. So when it came time to really dig in and release this last album, I felt like I was giving it I was giving it my all, really really kind of honing in on my own artistic vision. So that was a cool transformation to see in myself. It took forever, and I had to come up against a lot of perfectionism with that particular release. It took 3 years to record that.
Mm.
But I learned so much from it, and I do feel that it's the most me thing that I've released, and I'm really proud of it still. So it's all worth it.
I'm curious about the writing. You talked about the show having a pop leaning effect on the Breakfast album. It sounds like there's a few of those songs on there, like Fire and Brimstone, which is one of my favorites of your songs, Pretend and Robin, that maybe stylistically, sonically could have appeared on this latest album. Were those? Does that make any sense to you in the timeline of the writing of those songs versus the others?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think those songs in particular, Fire and Brimstone is my favorite song that I put on that record, and I still play it at shows today just because I feel like um, it it was it was one of those songs that really did kind of like sum up my essence at the time of who I was as a person, and the music that I wanted to make. So yeah, it totally could have been on the most recent album.
Yeah, I was just 17. My body held up strong, but my heart did not age with me. I never knew what was right and wrong. I had a 6-string fiddle that would sing my woes, like the hole in the middle of my goddamn soul. Not a worry in the world couldn't get to me. Yeah, I was pretty damn sure I wouldn't see 18. Fire and brimstone aren't so scary, but time and getting old is a burden we all carry on our blackened shoulders. In a world so pure, yeah, I swore to God I wouldn't love no one.
And I think the type of songwriting that I was doing with those tracks is um, it's pretty close to my authentic. I don't know. It's so weird, like using the word authentic. Like whoever I am at any given time is just whoever I am.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I definitely know what you mean. There's definitely a connecting thread between those songs and what I'm doing now as well.
Yeah. The the new album is I Do Not Have to Be Good. Just came out in March. When I was delving into your
March of 2020, we should clarify.
March of 2020, yes,
Yes. Yep.
it feels like
T-
yesterday. This last year, just well, I was having such a good time this last year. It went
it
by
was
really
such,
fast.
yeah, it was just such a fun year and a good year to
Yeah,
release an album.
yeah, yes.
Perfect
Well,
timing.
yeah, well timed, Emily. I have to say, really, latching on to the moment. And not everyone
We
has
all
those
had projects
instincts.
like that were just, not launched at the right time.
um,
Right. As you were saying.
as as I was saying, for whatever reason, I don't always do this, but I happen to approach your work in a chronological fashion. So when I arrived at I Do Not Have to Be Good, I really liked what I was hearing. The It's a good deal more sparse than your previous albums. It really
Yeah.
showcases your alto in such a nice way. It just makes it sound really big in the space that you create for it. Percussion's minimal, and the accoutrements I think are very tastefully selected, as opposed to like a broader instrumental treatment for your songs, which had appeared on previous albums.
And just to jump
Thank
in, I
you.
think even the album cover has continuity with the sound of the album in terms of it looking like your voice sounds, in terms of that ethereal quality. At least to my eye, I thought that was cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I loved that it had that effect. That was definitely the hope. And, you know, thank you. Like all of what you mentioned about the production and the kind of approach of the album that was really what I intended it to be, what I hoped it could be. And I think that's really what took the longest with the recording process. I had this vision of how special it could be if it were more sparse, and if we dialed back on the percussion, if we made these production choices that were maybe a little bit off the wall or unexpected, especially like, you know, doing different things with the vocals. Because yeah, my voice actually really did deepen over the years as I was recording it, and I loved it. I loved it felt like I was kind of getting to know my own vocal textures again. And that was really, really fun for me to work with. And it was the first of my projects that I was a producer on. So I co-produced it, and um, I had a lot of um, I had a lot of engagement with that decision making uh, of how to really to execute that vision. So it was just honestly like it was such a labor of love for me, and it sparked a passion for production work as well, and vocal arranging. That was one of my favorite parts of the album, was creating kind of just like subtle tapestries of vocals. I had so much fun. I spent so many hours just sitting in front of the console in the studio with a microphone going over and over and over with layers of, you know, different harmonies and vocal effects, and just playing around with what the possibilities were with that. So I don't know, even just talking about this, I'm excited to do more of this work in the future when it's time to release my next one. It makes me happy.
One of my favorite tracks on the new album is "Mary, I Love Her," which is built around this really lovely 2-chord minor vamp on the guitar. But the thing that adds this delicious tension into the song is the harmonies, and particularly the harmony that comes at the very end of the chorus is this very tight interval that's unresolved. And I think like it feels like the whole song is building to that moment in the song.
I do not have to be good. Not that I believe that anybody could be. If you're crawling on a gravel floor, who's the nice behavior for? I like the rivers in my head, indigo and ruby red, the water I've drawn and the blood I've bled. Have I simply visited? I took a walk this morning, listened to whatever's talking. Mary, I love her. Mary, I love her.
Thank you. Yeah, I was actually thinking about that harmony in particular as I was talking a minute ago. I had so much fun with that. So for a few of the songs on the album, the basis was actually a live performance. We figured out how to, isolate the acoustic guitar and the vocal from each other pretty well to the point where we still had control over things, but we got that kind of warmth and energy and movement that you get from a live performance, especially from someone like if you have an artist that is most at home and most used to playing guitar and singing at the same time, you're going to get a guitar performance and a vocal performance that is so different in a good way
Hmm.
than when you're separating it and you're constantly playing to a click track and you're layering things. It's going to end up having sometimes like a disjointed feel.
Hmm.
Um, and so, figuring out how to mic that, find a mic setup that allowed me to just be in the studio in the moment, performing how I would when I was on stage while still getting that quality. Um, that was key. And I think that it was the difference between um, the album really meeting my vision versus kind of falling short of it. So, doing that and then, layering harmonies over top of a live performance, like that felt like much more magical to me personally. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the album.
There were some production things in there, even apart from the vocal treatments. Aaron and I were talking about the keyboard part in Elbow being especially interesting and unexpected.
Yeah, yeah. Eli Hanley is such a talented keyboard player. Um, and we performed that one mostly live in the studio as well. Um, and uh, he almost like untethered with that one and just went to a totally different place. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved it. I loved it. Um, I couldn't hear it super well while we were performing in the studio. Like I didn't have him loud enough on my monitors or something. And I remember the take feeling really good and going back into the control room and listening to what he had done. And I was like, holy shit, dude, like that's crazy. Like I love that. We got to keep it. It was so kind of off the wall and different from what I expected from him.
Yeah, I love that production decision. We were really curious whether how intentionally subversive that was on your part after your previous productions were more traditionally instrumented. This particular accoutrement seemed to be almost a conscious rebellion against against your previous productions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There was, throughout recording this, there was kind of an attitude of anything goes. Like there were certain things where I was very directive about how, like on Do You Love Me Lately, I was really intentional about having the bass and percussion be really, really simple and mostly focused on the one rather than, turning it into like a shuffly thing. So for example, um, yeah, like I remember my bass player was kind of bouncing a little hard on that one. And I was just like, you know what? Just play on the one. That's all. Like, let's just play on the one this take. Nothing fancy. Make it so simple it's almost dumb. And I loved the way it turned out. But then with other songs like that part on Elbow is kind of just like I gave Eli some keywords. I was like, yeah, just make it sound kind of tense, odd, dark, like just make it a little wild on its own. And he just
Yeah,
went off and did his thing. And it's so cool, like finding the balance. Like there are certain things that you want to direct and certain things where it's best
yeah.
to just like you have a really good musician in the room, like just see what they do, like see what character they have to offer from what inspires them.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's the cool thing about collaboration.
And that song is great because it's like all of your songs. It's a beautiful melody. It's very dark in its chord structure, and it could be just like a very lovely tune with a dark edge to it. But instead, with each iteration of the verse and chorus, this keyboard part gets more and more demented with these like washes of dissonance. And to me, it creates this like something, is something bad gonna happen? Kind of feeling that's like always looming in the background. It's very effective as a treatment for the song.
My lips are sealed. You know how raining turns to pouring. I'm up in the rooftops, walking toward the morning. Blanket fog, drying in the red sunrise. Never been worse, never been better. Sleepwalking in the strangest weather. Passed him on a dead-end street, strolling with a shadow, some kind of angel hanging on his elbow. A grain of salt.
We're going to take a quick intermission for a word from our sponsor, which is us. Craft Brewed Music is a curated streaming service that streams better music for serious listeners. Sometimes we hear that people want to hear more of the songs we play on the podcast. There are a couple of ways to hear more Craft Brewed Music. You can download the app from the App Store or Google Play and get a free trial, or you can become a patron of the podcast on Patreon, linked in the description of each episode, and get exclusive bonus episodes containing extra music and a sampling of our other artists. We'll help you discover music off the beaten path so that you become the person your friends turn to for recommendations, and we split our income with the artists. Craft Brewed Music, better music for serious listeners. To hear samples and find out more about us, visit craftbrewedmusic.com. I kept having a word come to mind, over and over again as I listened to the record, and that word was searching. I feel like sometimes as we get older, we realize what we don't know, and I felt like that's kind of what I was hearing on the album, was kind of whether it was musical or lyrical or vocal, just kind of an exploration and a searching, and the confidence to do that.
Hmm. That's
It sounds
absolutely, yeah, that's a huge thing. Like,
yeah, it sounds like an intensely personal project.
yeah, yeah. Very. That's a good way to describe that. That kind of tone, the tone that the album has, and also just like my personal life at the time. I think it's funny, the sort of intention, um, and like even the name for the album, I Do Not Have to Be Good. I didn't land on that as a title choice until the very end of the process. Like, I don't know, maybe a month before we were finished with it. And it kind of it came about. Um, it was sort of connected to the Mary I Love Her song that I based off of a Mary Oliver poem. And the first line of it is "You do not have to be good." And the whole, first verse of that poem is talking about how you don't have to be sorry for existing. You don't have to be constantly in this repentant state. And part of the struggle of creating that album for me was being so fixated on making it perfect. Like it has to be so good. It has to, blow everything else out of the water. Like I have to give the best performance that I've ever given. And sometimes those thought processes can be motivating, and they can get you into this space of discipline and excellence. But a lot of the time, and I think for many musicians, it gets you in this place of paralysis and just sort of an inability to move forward. It's kind of that cliche of like perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
And that was a big theme at the time for me to figure out. But every breakthrough that we had ended up being not perfect, or not planned, or not completely thought out from A to Z. And that was a lesson that I was constantly teaching myself or being taught by the other people in the process of making it. And it was very freeing. And so I kind of switched gears a little bit and refocused my mindset instead of on perfection, just to be on truth. And, like even if I don't have that truth in my hand, even if I'm still searching for it, there is truth. There is a truth in the present moment of just making beautiful music and having beautiful connections, and that being enough. Doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be good. It can just be true,
Well, and so it turns into something more powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
The lyrics are beautiful on the album, and I like you have this ability to blend things that seem exceedingly personal, and then blend that in with things that are also easily generalizable and accessible for the listener, so that you can get the sense of somebody having a very intimate telling of their personal experience, and yet allow the listener to still access and to kind of project their own experience into the music. I think Static does that. Your tune Static does that for me, when you're clearly talking about something that I presume is personal to you and a character in your life. This imagery with the record that gives you the dreams you don't like, and so you scratched it all to death, and whoever gave you this record is playing it louder because they like the effect that the scratches put on the sound.
Yeah. 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 That's a huge compliment. Thank you. Like what you said about my writing style. I appreciate it. It's very meaningful.
Remember when you were in my head, like that record that you played me every night before bed. Didn't like the dreams it gave me, so I scratched it all to death. But you said it added character, turned it up and showed your friends. Clear as a bell on a cabin wall, calling me home when the sun goes down and the chorus falls. I don't need your
I think it's what I try to do or hope to do as a songwriter, um, just to offer up my personal experience in a vulnerable way, as vulnerable as I need to be to be telling the truth about it,
Hmm.
without making it necessarily all about me and getting so specific that it just doesn't even have any bearing on anyone else's life or experience. So yeah, I think as I get older, I want to stay in touch with that, and because I think that's really the job of a songwriter. Um, when it comes down to it, you're just um, filtering the human experience through your own lens. Um, and if you're doing that in in a true way, then it's going to resonate with people. Maybe not a lot of people, maybe only a handful, but even if it only resonates with a handful, you're still doing your job and you're still fulfilling that purpose. At least that's how I feel about it.
And it must be hard to do that and maintain some degree of privacy as well. As a listener, when it comes to lyrics, I'm always kind of trying to figure out what's going on in a song. It's kind of like when you see a stranger in the airport, you write your own story for them. and
Yeah.
and so I'm always listening and try to, subconsciously figuring out what's going on. And with your lyrics, it would, I'd feel like I'd be getting close, and then there'd be a word or a phrase that would throw me off the scent, and which is really very artistic and probably intentional.
Sometimes you might be giving me a little bit too much credit, so but even if it's accidental, if that's the effect, that's good. I think it's interesting. Like I am a pretty reserved person for the most part. I'm blessed to have good close relationships in my life, but I know that I can come off as sort of quiet and removed when you first get to know me. So it's always interesting. Like I I I just have never really had any qualms about getting up on stage and singing about things that have come from such personal emotional experiences. I don't know how to explain that. Um, but it's cathartic. It is to be able to write about those things and feel like you're being seen in them. Um, the conversations that you can have with people after a performance, if they're really connecting with your lyrics, they can be pretty amazing. They can also devolve into therapy sessions very quickly. So I've had to figure out how to like not necessarily like I don't always want to go there with everyone, and I think that's okay.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, I'm still figuring that out, how to maintain like my kind of comfort as a more private person, but also keeping open and keeping connected to those emotional things. It's a balance, like everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
A set of lyrics that really grabbed me as I was listening to the new album are from the first track called "Nap," and this pre-chorus that goes, "Jesus is coming, hope you ate your spinach, because Sally went blind and Judas got stitches, and I would take a nap with you over anything that God could do." Which I am a lover of adding allusions to scripture in song verse, because I think it adds a gravitas, and it's really cool when you juxtapose it with something that's more profane or mundane, like an everyday
Yeah.
life thing. And I like the tension that creates in the lyric. I mean, everyone has their own spiritual sensibilities. Some people are defensive, some people are you know agnostic about the whole thing, but there's something about using religious themes that I think adds a power to whatever personal thing it is you're talking about.
I totally agree. I love biblical references in art and music, and just religious and spiritual references in general. I find them to be so incredibly powerful. Because so many people um have a relationship to those themes, whatever it might be, whether it's a defensive one, whether it's an aggressive one, whether it's a devotional one. I think it just immediately conjures up so many different images and feelings and experiences for people. I grew up in the Christian religion, and I wouldn't call myself agnostic or an atheist or really anything in particular. But at the times I was writing that song and the album, I was really kind of laying down my belief system and putting it back up on the shelf. I really, at that point, I felt like certain aspects of dogmatic organized religion just weren't making me happy in my life. And I was ready to explore other things. And I think anytime you're ready to put something down that you've been holding on to for a long time, there's like a grieving process. So it's like there's like the anger, denial, whatever the 5 things of grieving are. I think they come up.
The Kubler-Ross stages.
Yes. I think those come up. I think those come up pretty strongly when you're letting go of belief systems too. And so I just felt this really strong drive to write something that had those kind of like irreverent biblical themes to it. And I kind of like, I look back and I laugh a little bit now too, because I remember being just really angry when I first wrote that song. But now like I'm definitely not in that angry place. So I just chuckle at it. Like I just see it as kind of funny. And I personally enjoy that. I like not being angry about things anymore.
Yeah.
And so as a performer, is it hard to get back to that place? To inhabit a certain song, whether it's that song or another song? I'd imagine there's a something of the role of an actor there, I guess.
Yeah. I think sometimes I would say there's some acting. I can remember how it felt to be angry about it. I can also call in some other emotions. I think I'm not angry at religion anymore, but I think I still am angry at the people in the world who use religion as an instrument of power to do horrible things, or to make excuses for their own behavior. So it's almost like the anger has shifted to a more specific place rather than I'm angry at God, I'm angry at Christianity. Like, no, I'm angry at billionaire Christians who don't help out the rest of the world, because what do you actually believe in? I'm angry at homophobic people who have the power to make other people's lives difficult and do so. Like that sort of stuff. So I can definitely I can tap into Right. Let me just keep going down the rest of the list. Wait, maybe I am still angry, everyone.
No. Oh, wait, turns out I am angry.
Oh man, just take that one into therapy.
We're angry at the same things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I because you're decent people. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're not angry at those things, then, oh, man.
Yeah, this stuff's not hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you're not angry about it, then you're probably in denial, which, I get that too. It's hard to be a human. You can't be angry at everything all the time.
Tell me about the Starman again. Tell me about your morning cigarette. Speaking tongues I understand. Teach me ones I haven't picked up yet. You remind me of something that the Jesus people said. Everything makes sense on Sunday morning. stitches, and I would take a nap with you over anything that God could do. You're not going to bed without me, not going anywhere without me.
So, we're always in these interviews, we're picking out our favorite songs, and we're doing a spotlight of your album here and picking the songs. As we put that spotlight on the album, are there any parts of it or songs or aspects of it that we've missed that maybe are your favorites or most important to you?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to pick specific moments that are the most special to me, because I feel like the album, it's a little bit on the shorter side at like 40 minutes. And all the song, like, I think that's part of why it took so long. I really wanted every part of it to be something that I was happy with and felt like it was an important part of the labyrinth or whatever, like the journey of it. I I love the way that "Do You Love Me Lately" turned out. That song, it took the longest to really get it to a place where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm happy with it. Because for months on end, it ended up getting kind of like pushed onto the back burner, because every time I heard it, I was just like, oh God, this just isn't right. Like, I don't like it. I was proud of the lyrics, and I thought it had a ton of potential, but the way the band performance had come across on that one was just off. And so that was the one that completely stripped apart. I was playing it on an acoustic guitar originally and strumming, whereas with the actual version, I ended up doing a really sparse electric part that was totally different from what I had written, other than just like the bass chords being the same. And that was the one where I was really like, okay, Dan, like, I just want you hitting toms on this one. Like, don't touch that hi-hat. Like, don't, the kick here, focus on the toms. And he nailed it. He's a really, really great drummer. And then with my bass player, like, okay, bass on the one, that's all. And like, yeah, hit this chord change with me. But other than that, like, stay on that one. And the way it turned out after that recording session completely got it to the place where I wanted it to be. And then it subsequently ended up being like the most successful song on the album. I think it's almost to 2 million plays on Spotify now. Which I just couldn't. Yeah, it's surreal to even say it. It's not something I ever expected to happen with this album or that song, but it got put on a fairly popular Spotify playlist, and it's been there for almost a year now. They haven't moved it off the playlist, so that was that was great. Huge. And I think looking back to that moment of the recording process, like that's definitely something I smile about, and I'm proud of what we made together.
She wore a t-shirt inside out. I must have worn her down, 'cause we danced in a kitchen to all of blue, and she let me stick around, and she let me stick around.
It sounds like a production achievement as well.
Yeah, I have to say, I did co-produce the album with Dalton Brand, and his engineering, he engineered it as well. His engineering and production was really symbiotic with my whole thought process on the album, and I think we worked really well together to make it happen. So.
Well, it's a beautiful album, and I think a really cool uh, piece of the your artistic puzzle, and it's been really fun talking about it with you. So thanks for your time.
Oh God, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks for such detailed, thoughtful questions about it. It's I haven't gotten to nerd out about this album like this before, so that's been very enjoyable for me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. Craft Brewed Music, both the podcast and the streaming service, has the mission of promoting this music and these artists. We can't do that without ears on the music. So if you like what you've heard here, we're going to ask two small favors. First, tell someone about the podcast. Secondly, go to the App Store or Google Play, download the Craft Brewed Music app, and try a free 2-week trial of the streaming service. For more information, visit us at craftbrewedmusic.com. Thanks again, and see you next time.